everyone. Welcome back to the Student Voice podcast. This is our second installment for this trimester. As I remember, we do these in week 3 and week 9. And I'm joined by Andres as my lovely co-host today, as well as Evan and Josephine and Jessica, which you remember from our last episode. And a new person on the block, Michelle, who is one of our student welfare advisors. Or are you the student welfare advisor?
At the moment, yes, but eventually I'll be one of the 4.
Sounds good. All right. Well, Andre, do you want to kick off for today?
Yes. So before we start with the topic, we have a very exciting new section for the podcast. So we have our motivational phrase of the day. And today the phrase is, just one small positive thought can change your day. So let us know in the comments on YouTube if you agree or disagree with this phrase. And now I think we can kick off with the podcast, with the topic.
Michelle, you have some amazing tips on procrastination for us today.
Before I even get to the procrastination tips, it's funny because when I got this topic and got asked to be here, I actually started procrastinating about looking more into it. So I thought that was funny. But I think procrastination, coming from a mental health welfare perspective, is to understand what procrastination is first, right? So it's essentially delaying something or postponing something you should have done. It's the whole idea of, you know what, I can do it tomorrow. But then tomorrow never really comes because tomorrow will constantly be there, right? So I think when it comes to procrastination, it's always a fine line as well between procrastination and taking care of yourself. So you need to first and foremost figure out why you're procrastinating, because sometimes it's actually revealing something in you. So it could be you're actually maybe a fear of perfectionism, or it could be just your fear of success, which is a real thing because you've got these higher expectations of yourself. But it also could be a total opposite, a fear of failure. So you think, well, if I don't do it, then I'm never going to fail. That just means I'm not going to start on the assignment, because if I hand in the assignment, then that means I never fail. But what if you pass? What if you do well? So I think procrastination sometimes reveals so much about you or things that you're actually going through. And it could be simple as asking for help, like, how do I get out of this procrastination thing? So it could be something like you actually have some mental thing that's actually going on as well, and that you need to talk about it as well. I hope I answered that well.
Yeah, no, I'm honestly, I think I speak for most students when I say, I've dealt with procrastination plenty. For me, it's often a fear of failure thing. I think I have really big expectations for where I think my work should be. And so that means that I procrastinate because I'm scared I won't reach those expectations. But it's funny because I was kind of reminded that every time that I've ever actually put in my 100%, I have never really failed, So it's almost an irrational fear, because if you actually just sat down and did it, everything would be fine.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's like the stress that we put ourselves through beforehand is worse than the actual thing itself.
Yeah. And I was just going to touch as well, like you brought a good example. Like I remember in uni, I handed in an assignment that I actually put 100% effort into it, and it came back as a pass. But then there was an assignment that I kind of like procrastinated on, and it came back as a HD, and I was not happy with it. Because to me, I knew if I put 100%, I would have done so well on it. So it's kind of that level of going, okay, I need to just do it and just remove that temporary postponing things, and I guess figure out why I'm actually procrastinating. And for me, I know a lot of it is to do with failure, perfectionism, and trying to always perfect something before I give it for somebody to read.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty hard to fail at something anyway if you put 100% effort into it, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you would have to be pretty basic, and I'm not being rude when I say that, right? To put in 100% of your energy. No, seriously, right? 100% of your energy. Think of what that means, right? Every single thing you've got of yourself into something, and then fail it.
Exactly.
It's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to do, right? Because you are now at your peak absolute best. So when you do that, I think you can never ever fail. And I think you have to train your brain. And I'll talk about it in my section a bit later about developing good habits, right? So actually train your brain to understand that if I do put everything into something, right, I might not get a HD, I might not get a credit, but I will definitely pass, and you will. Because the lecturer, I think, when they read that, they understand, they can see, they know your work, they know the quality of your work. They see that you've put 100% of work into it. You might not answer the topic exactly, you might be a little bit off here, you might not have the exact amount of references, but you won't fail it, right? Because they'll see that you've put 100%
because you've done your
effort
best.
into it.
Because
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
only having to beat yourself to become the best, so better than you were yesterday.
Sure.
Yeah. That's definitely big reassurance for students who are like listening out there, just knowing that like, hey, like there's no need to put that so much pressure and expectation on yourself, because people will be able to see that effort that you put in. So definitely agree with what you're saying, Evan. Yeah.
And I think the lecturers in Torrens University, they're very comprehensive. They understand, and they try not to give like just a grade, but to understand the student, and everything is like all together. So it's very nice. Like
the difference is, Andres, I think that the lecturers, you know, and I don't want this to sound like we're, you know, buttering up the lecturers, but it's true. I think one of the distinguishing
We're just saying this
differences
so they'll give us better grades.
Yes. So for any lecturers listening, program directors, please, student number is 8 now. So the difference in the lecturers at Torrens and not just the lecturers, but the success coaches and the staff, is that because I think the university is more industry based, we don't want our students to fail. There is no joy. You know, if students go, oh, he's going to fail me, she's going to fail me. There is no joy for any lecturer to fail a student. There is no joy in that. Because at the end of the day, when you go into your big dream job and your big career, you're very rarely going to get an assignment from your boss, and the boss is going to say, you failed. You failed the assignment. It's not going to happen.
It's a lot of paperwork for them too when you fail.
It's a lot of paperwork. Yeah. So you might get a project in your job and you might not do great in the project, right? But your boss will give you feedback about the project, and they make sure that the next time you do the project, you'll do better and better and better. And that's what I think what the assessments are based at the university, that the lecturers don't want to fail you. They'll see where you're missing information or where your argument is not quite so cohesive, and they'll steer you in the right direction. So it's not really about failure. I think it's more about addressing, you know, maybe inconsistencies or something that you're lacking in your work, and then making sure that you do it better next time.
It's funny. I think my procrastination started to get a lot better, or I started procrastinating a lot less when I started to get rid of those expectations and just focused on making work that I love, and just forgetting about everything else. Like when I stopped trying to aim for a grade or stopped trying to aim, when I wasn't trying to impress anyone else, or even just to stop trying to impress myself. And just let the work shine through. That was when I was having.
Just let it flow. Let it flow. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
So Mitchell, so for example, in Torrens University, there are many international students. Do you think like they talk English, most of them, they talk English as a second language? Do you think there is any relation between procrastinating and English as a second language? Like the fear of writing an assessment or something related to that?
I'm not going to speak on behalf of all the international students. I will speak on behalf of myself though. And I know sometimes when you are multilingual, it's really hard to express yourself in one certain language, because now you've put in that people are going to judge me if they read this, or if it's the wrong comma, I've put grammatical errors and stuff. What I could suggest though is once you understand that that is the biggest problem that you're having, that I can't really converse well, find people that you can speak with. Could be a simple, hey, can we catch up for tea? I'm going to use tea a lot actually, but let's catch up for tea or coffee, and let's have some conversations with English. It could be, oh, you can teach me your language as well. And that becomes like a conversational starter, like you start from there. But yes, find why it's happening and then start from there.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I've had a lot of international students express that they sort of apologize for their bad English, but then they're speaking like better English than me. So I think for a lot of times, I think for any international students listening to this, it's all right. Like, I think in Australia we're quite forgiving in that aspect. Like, I don't care if your English is not perfect; it's not a big deal. But yeah. What are some ways, Michelle, that you can actually, the students can help improve their failure mindset so they can become a bit more proactive?
Okay, so I'm just gonna leave with one. It's focus on doing the best for you. So like you need to be better than you were yesterday. And then once you start making that little step, like I'm gonna be better than I was yesterday, and then continue. And then it's just figuring out how am I gonna be better than I was yesterday? Because literally the only person you should be comparing yourself to is yourself, not anybody else in the room, no one, yourself. So just do that. Or start there. It works, well, kind of works for me. We're all learning, right? It's all a learning journey as well.
And I guess that's an important part of it too, that you mentioned, like, you know, not every technique is going to work for every single person. So if you're looking at someone's technique and thinking that technique's not working for me, doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It just means that you've got a different learning style or whatever.
And it's also an opportunity to learn. If you realize that's not working, try something else.
Good point.
How much of a role does anxiety play in a lot of this too?
Quite a lot. Well, actually, no. I do not have the stats to this, so I should not say quite a lot. But sometimes it is anxiety comes a lot into that. So I think especially with procrastination, I think sometimes we view procrastination as a form of laziness or as a time management issue, but sometimes it's more to do with depression and anxiety actually. And again, that comes back to not necessarily just only being self-aware, but you can then go talk to a counselor, or you can start with your success coach, or that's where I come in as well. So you can always like talk to me. I can help then coordinate and triage to see who's the best person to speak to you. So whether it's a counselor or a success coach, whether it's a combination, just to make sure you're at that, I guess, prime spot of where you need to be and where you need to be in order to continue going forward.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that it's easy to struggle with as a procrastinator is actually taking the time for self-care, because it's easy to feel like the self-care is procrastinating. And so you end up in this cycle of like, you know, you're taking some time for yourself, but at the same time, you're actually feeling guilty about not doing work. So I'd be really interested to hear if you've got any tips around how to do that, how to take the time for yourself without feeling guilty about it.
I wish I could say this is something I've mastered. No, I'm still learning about it. But I think this is something that I've learned, especially in the last 6 months or post-COVID, I should say, that with self-care, it is important. Like we learned a lot about people being kind to other people, right? People doing the most. Like I absolutely loved listening to how people were helping each other, etc. and so forth. But in being kind to everybody, you have to realize that self-care is a form of being kind to yourself. So when you take care of yourself, even if, like I always say to people, like I'm passionate about people, I'm passionate about mental health, but until I actually take care of myself and I do that self-care, I can't take care of many people. I can't help other people to come to that realization as well. So self-care is a form of being kind to yourself, and that's something that some people master it quickly. As soon as something happens, they master it quickly. But it's taken me a long time. And honestly, I'm still learning about taking care of myself, or just taking that 10 minutes of like, okay, I need going for a walk, or hey, I need to finish work early. Sometimes like I'll push myself and I'll get home and I'm like, oh my God, what's happening? So you have to actually, again, being self-aware and then being able to self-care and realize that it's just a kindness thing. You're actually being kind to yourself.
It was pointed out to me recently that I'm actually a lot, I speak like the way that I speak to myself internally, like I'm not very kind, you know? So that's something that I'm working on too. But yeah, what were you going to say, Andres?
Yes, Evan, so do you think if you want to be kind to yourself, that's related to good habits? If you have good habits, you're being kind to yourself in some way?
Well, yeah, definitely. So let's just take a step back, I think, just for a moment and consider why we're talking about procrastination. So I think coming up to the very, very business end, right, of the trimester, and the year, right, not just the trimester, where we are doing our third assessments, probably even our fourth assessments, the group assessments, the big ones, the 3,000 word ones, the ones that are worth 40% of our mark. This can be when we start to procrastinate a lot, because we can feel the end is in sight. And sometimes we do procrastinate. But I think it's important that we need to be honest with ourselves and ask ourselves why we're procrastinating. I used to be a terrible procrastinator. I'm not anymore, I've got to say. But I just, Ahmed's laughing. I used to be terrible, like really terrible, right? But then I ask myself, why am I procrastinating? I think sometimes we unconsciously procrastinate because we work well under pressure, right? So I think some of us do really well to do the assignment in the last 2 or 3 days. That's not something which I would necessarily advise because it does put a lot of pressure on yourself. However, some people really work very well under pressure. So you unconsciously end up procrastinating because you know that if you start your assignment on a Thursday or a Friday or a Saturday, then you'll probably do a much better job than if you start to plan it, 2 or 3 weeks in advance. And that's okay. That's all right. So I think we have to be careful when we give students advice and say, start your assignment 4 weeks early. For some people who need that time, who appreciate that sort of time to get it together, that's fine. But some students like to procrastinate or like to do it under pressure. And that's why sometimes they unconsciously procrastinate. So I think what Michelle said about understanding yourself and understanding your limits and your limitations is very, very important. So for me, procrastination, to get over it, how I got over it, is to develop good habits. Right? So don't be fixated with the procrastination. Ignore the procrastination. And don't be fixated on bad habits, right? I think it's good to instill and to try and teach yourself some good habits to neutralize, right, the bad habits. So something that I like to do is right before I study, and this is how I develop my good habit. Right before I study, I would do something for half an hour that I absolutely loved. And that could be my favorite album, go to my favorite cafe, sit there, have a cup of coffee in my favorite chair, looking over the water, whatever it was, right? Only for half an hour, a very short period of time. Then I would do my study. Then at the end of my study, I would do that same activity again, but a different, right? So it was music before, it might be coffee now. And I would do this continuously every time. And what that does, so these sensory things, right? So the coffee, the smell, the music, something sensory, linking it together with something that you don't really want to do, like study or do an assignment, creates a good habit. Then in the future, when you start having these wonderful experiences like listening to music or having coffee, the study will just flow very naturally. It doesn't feel like you are actually studying. I know it might sound very difficult to believe, but you've got to try it to actually see how it works. And that's how you develop a good habit. Start off with that little sensory thing for a while. Do the study, an hour or 2 hours, whatever it is. And make sure you don't study for more than 2 hours. There's a reason why movies are 2 hours or less. Because we can't concentrate for very long periods of time without getting itchy or without wanting to stand up and talk to our friend or talk to the person next to you. So for me, 2 hours is the absolute maximum in one block that I will study. So it's like half an hour, 2 hours, half an hour. That's it. Then I'll take a break for an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, and then do the same thing over again. The study doesn't feel like I'm really studying, right? And then I make sure that people have a to-do list, right? I have a to-not-do list. I think that the not-to-do list is much better than the to-do list. Okay, the to-do list puts pressure. I need to do this. And you have this list of 7 or 8 things. And that can bring in itself anxiety. And that can also bring into itself procrastination. You look at a to-do list of 15 things that you have to do in the day and you think, I've got to get the assignment done. I've got to walk the dog. I've got to do too much stuff. So you start procrastinating. Don't have a to-do list. Have a to-not-do list. All right? I will not watch Netflix today until boom, 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 boom. I will not go out to dinner tonight with my friends until I will not book my holiday until I have the to-not-do list. Never more than 2 or 3 things on the to-not-do list. And make sure that you follow the to-not-do list. So I will not sit there and watch Netflix the day before my assignment is due, right? Until I do my assignment. Once you've satisfied that thing on the to-not-do list, reward yourself. Give yourself a little reward. And the rewards can be very simple. They don't need to be anything huge or anything. I love books. I'm an avid book reader. So a reward for me, if I've accomplished one of my to-not-dos, is I will order a book, right? So I'll go into Amazon or whatever, and I'll order the book. That's my reward. I've bought the book. When the book comes, I will not open the book, right? Because my next reward is to open the package and release the book and start to read the book. And these are little rewards that I give myself, but it works. For me, it works every time because it makes me accountable to myself. It makes me accountable for my to-not-dos. And it makes me realize that I'm developing a good habit, right? That I am instilling in myself behaviors that I know are going to be rewarded in the future, that I won't have to cram, that I won't have to put myself under unnecessary anxiety and stress. Who the hell wants to put themselves under the amount of, we already are so stressed in our lives as it is. We have so much other anxiety. Why would you want to deliberately, purposely put extra anxiety on yourself by not creating a decent habit or a good habit, and then and living a much more fulfilling life for me, right? There are so many external things that we can't control. We can control these things. And with things like rewards, I make sure that some of the rewards, I think when you share your rewards with friends, they become a bit more meaningful. So I'll say, for example, I won't, watch Netflix, and so I won't do something. But then when I do it, my reward is maybe having dinner with friends or going to a movie with friends. When you share that reward with other people, I think it becomes a bit more meaningful, and it makes you want to accomplish it a bit better. So I think rewards are very, very important. And you'll be very surprised. I mean, I've been doing this for about 4 or 5 years. I'm quite methodical in my day, and I'm very structured. But I don't think I procrastinate. Maybe I do, but I don't think I do. I don't see it as procrastination though, right? Because I think, like as Michelle said before, when you know your limitations, when you know yourself a bit better, and you know that, okay, you know what, I might struggle a bit with that particular thing. Maybe you're not procrastinating. Maybe it's just because you don't understand the assignment. That's not procrastinating, right? That's just you don't understand the brief. Go back and read the brief again. You know the brief. Yeah. I'm going to get straight into it.
And I think also just even what I even said on being self-aware and knowing your limits as well. When you know your limits, you also stop comparing yourself to other people, right? Yeah. Because I think especially the more you go into like 3rd, 4th year post-grad, even for most people have families, people have got other things to do, full-time jobs. So if you're sitting there not knowing your limits and comparing yourself, you start then procrastinating from doing your assignment because you're sitting there thinking, oh, Josephine is going to do so well on this assignment and all this, but you're forgetting that you have your personal limits as well. So you need to be aware of what you need to do. And like Ivan said, like rewards work for him, right? But they might not work for you. Again, coming back to knowing your limits, your self-awareness, and then figuring out what's working for you as well.
I had a lecturer who would keep a bag of chocolates on her desk, and each time she'd finish something on a list, she could eat one. And that was the rule.
Oh, wow.
That was really fun.
That's a really good reward. But what about if you don't like chocolate?
Well, then you can do something else. But also, if you don't like chocolate, get out.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. Sometimes as Michelle say, because of COVID, we started to try to be very kind to others. And every time we were thinking, all right, so I'm going to check in on this person if they're doing all right, if they're having a good time, if they might lose their job or something. And you just think in other people. And sometimes we really forget like to think about us. And I think the rewards is also like part of being kind to yourself and the good habits. I think I've learned a lot today with the good habits. It's really like for me, I'm connecting like Michelle and Evan's topic, and I really can see like a connection, a link between being kind and rewards and good habits. So yeah, it's really interesting. I'm very happy with this, and hopefully, like I have the chance like to work and to study a little bit close to Evan, and I can see that for him it really works. So maybe for you guys can also work. Like you have to give it a try and to see how everything goes for you, and maybe your grades are gonna improve, or maybe just your well-being or your welfare is gonna improve. I think that's the most important thing. I remember I've talked to some international students from Torrens University, and sometimes when they don't submit an assignment on time, the lecturer, instead of attacking them to say, oh, you're gonna submit the assignment late, so you're gonna have a penalty. Instead of doing that, usually the lecturers, they ask, is everything okay? Are you all right? Do you need any help? And they're always concentrating like to check on the students if they're doing all right. Of course, they have to follow the rules. If they have to apply like the penalty, they're gonna do it. But also they give you the chance like to apply for a special consideration form, even though it's after the due date, because the rules is before, but sometimes they understand, like humans, they understand international students, they understand that you're going like through too much, like you're away from your family, that you're working, you're studying, and they understand that, and they really want you like to succeed in your studies. So I think developing like good habits, rewarding yourself, knowing your limitations can really help like for to avoid like procrastinating. So yeah, that's a little bit
I
of my
think at the end of the day, you're right, Andres. I think at the end of the day, everything that we do should be centered around our personal well-being and making sure that we're okay, right? So all these good habits, all the advice that we've all sort of suggested, or things that work for us, is all about our well-being. Our grades will improve, or our grades will be good if we look after ourselves, right? We will not procrastinate if that's an issue, if we start to look after ourselves. So I think at the center of everything that we're talking about really is our personal well-being and the well-being of even people around us. Start looking after yourself, understand yourself, and you will start to see, the rewards. And I don't want to sound like a, philosophy on the back of a rice bubbles packet or something, like some cheap 2-bit philosopher, but it's true. I think we've all experienced, and Michelle brought up this wonderful example of COVID, where we started to see this. I think until then, maybe as people would become a little bit skeptical or a little bit cynical of how these things work. But I think we saw in those 2 years that when we did start to look after ourselves and other people, we all started to feel really good about it. And we're all talking about how good we felt about it. And I think that's wonderful. Something that we had never really spoken about before. People started seeing goodness in themselves, in others, in their communities, and started spreading that love to other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And I really hope that we don't lose that, that we have reignited that passion for looking after ourselves and our fellow people, and that we take that, throughout the next whatever years of our lives, because I think it's very important.
Yeah. And I think as well, it's just, if you understand that self-care is not selfish, but it's being kind to yourself, everything sort of like, and you have that self-awareness. So self-awareness, self-care is not selfish, and be kind to yourself as you're being kind to others. It allows you then to just go, okay, today we're focusing on being the best we can. Sometimes the best you can sometimes is just sitting down with a good book and a big cup of tea.
Yeah.
Yes, I say tea a lot. A big cup of tea. Or it could be going for a long walk. And some days you probably just need to walk for 10 minutes. And you feel that you feel good. You come back, you do an assignment. You probably start another assignment that's due in 3 weeks. But being self-aware, self-care is not selfish. Be kind to yourself. And if none of this, you're like, I have no clue what's happening as well. Just kind of hold off on of us. I guess that's where my role comes in as well as a student welfare advisor. Like I said earlier, like come talk to us, talk to me, and we can see who can best help you as well.
Yeah, thank you,
I,
Michelle.
I think there's like a really importance of actually using the services that we have at Torrens, because we are very lucky to like be able to access like 12 counseling sessions a year. Like that is amazing for students, and it's free as well. I know for me, like I definitely related to what you said, Ahmed, about like being so hard on yourself, being perfectionist and everything like that. And Evan, Michelle, like what you've said, especially about self-care and everything. That's something that's definitely looked at in counseling. And one of the exercises they taught with me is, well, other than talking about like what you're going through and stuff like that, if you're like feeling like stressed or feeling like real like sad and everything like that, you kind of like find where it's focused on. Like let's say like if it's stress, it would be like around your head. And then my counselor told me like, okay, you get to like massage, like just massage that part of yourself and on your head or wherever you're feeling. Yeah, exactly, Evan.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and I think like when that happens, when you're massaging everything, you
Feels
basically
good.
kind of like
Even
tell
like 10
yourself,
seconds.
yeah, exactly. And it can be like anywhere on your body. But basically when you get like while you're massaging yourself, like you tell yourself what you kind of need to hear. Because sometimes like we want to like be able to hear from someone else, like, I believe in you or something like that. But I remember in that particular counseling session when I was massaging, she's like, okay, just tell what you need to say to yourself. And then I was just telling myself like, oh, I believe in you, like I love you and stuff like that. And literal tears, like I was bawling because that was something that I thought I needed to hear from other people, but I needed to hear from myself
Yourself.
more.
Yeah, always.
And I think that's a lot more powerful. And that is especially why like self-care is so important. So yeah.
What's that
Self-affirmation
saying?
is a million
Yeah.
times more important than getting the affirmation from other people.
As well as there's
I
that
think you
saying,
agree.
yeah. Oh, sorry, but there's that saying
That's all
that
right.
says, "Speak to yourself how you'd speak to other people." Right. So literally, what you were doing, like I'm speaking to myself the way I would speak to other people. If I say, "You have very nice haircut," I also would say, "Oh, I have a very nice hairstyle." So
Yes,
you know,
Michelle.
yeah.
You do, Michelle. You do, by the way.
Alrighty, so I think we're going to an end. Sadly, the topic was really nice, but stay tuned, guys, for the upcoming podcast, like for T1. Don't forget to subscribe, to like the video, to share the video with others. We hope like this topic help you. It helped me, so I'm very happy. So I hope you're happy as well. So yeah, thank you, Michelle and Evan, for everything that you talk about and you taught to us. It was really useful. Yeah, see you next time. Thank you, everyone.
See you guys.
Bye bye.